Hello everyone and welcome to my very first scrapbook layout share for 2023. This is a workshop that I've been working on with the brand new travel themed collection called Are We There Yet? From Close to My Heart. I'm going to show you 4 double page spreads. I've got a couple of little mini demos on how I achieved some of the treatments to these pages, and that I'm going to put at the end of this video, so make sure you hang around to watch that. And the story with how these came together is these layouts are actually from a workshop guide that I was working on last year with the Close to My Heart Freshly Baked collection, and unfortunately I was a little bit slow, and by the time I got it all worked out, those papers had sold out. So I thought I would reinvent this workshop guide with the Are We There Yet collection. I know you've probably seen by now a lot of flip throughs of the catalogues and a share of the collection, but I'm just going to bring in the papers because I wanted to show you those. These are the ones that I have used throughout these 4 double page layouts. I've pretty much used all of these papers and the zip strips. I'll also show you at the end what is left over. I also used the stickers from this collection, but I've used pretty much all of them up, and I don't have another sticker sheet to show you, but you'll see those as I go through the layouts. The other things that I've used with these 4 double page spreads are these gorgeous suitcase Are We There Yet rubber shapes. These are like a rubber with a sticky back, so all you have to do is peel them off and stick them on. And I just love the colours and the style of all of these. And I've also brought in these 2 coordinating stamp sets, the Are We There Yet scrapbooking and the Are We There Yet borders. And both of these sets come with thin cuts. So you can see these 3 items here all have thin cuts with them, and most of all of the scrapbooking stamp set has thin cuts with it, excluding this little dotted arrow. Other thing that I've used for this are the circle thin cuts. So I've used a 2.5 inch circle, and I've also brought in the melon dots, and I've done a little bit of treatment to those, so I'm going to show you what I've done to those to make these match in with the layouts that I have designed. You'll find all the details for the workshop guide in the description below, as well as all the links to all the products that I've used. So let me clear all of this away, and then I can get to showing you what I have created with these layouts. Oh, and I'm also going to show you the layouts that I created with the Freshly Baked collection, just to give you a little bit of inspiration and to show you that the workshop guides and the cutting guides that I create can be used on other collections and other patterns. The first layout I've done uses that gorgeous matte paper, and you can see I've done a little bit of treatment to that, and as I said, I will show you how I've treated this, but I wanted to bring in some ink blending to create a little bit more depth to this paper. You can see this is the original paper here without any ink blending, and it makes such a difference to add a little bit of depth to the outside edges of these. I've kept this area on the inside true to the original colour. I've used Sapphire, Lagoon and also Vintage Photo to bring in a lot of depth to these pieces. The other thing that I forgot to mention that I've used is some mocha glitter paper. We don't actually have that as shimmer trim, but the glitter paper you can cut down into 1/4 inch strips, and I've cut the paper on an angle so that I would have enough to go across this 11.5 inch square that I've got here that's matted onto mocha paper. You can see these are the stickers here. They're popped up on foam dots, the cameras, and a couple of the other pieces have popped up as well. The zip strips are really fun to cut apart and use as little accents. Then I have brought in some stamping using this borders thin cuts, and you can see this is one complete border. So when you stamp this, it's all in one piece. Now what I did was actually die cut it out and then did some fussy cutting to separate these, but you could actually just stamp these and then fussy cut out the ones that you needed without doing the die cutting step. But I just found it really easy to manage and sit there and just cut around these. They're all tucked in amongst things mainly, so it doesn't matter if some of the white edge is a little bit narrower than the others. People aren't really going to notice that. And you can see here, these are the melon dots, and what I've done is actually bring in the metallic paint marker. I've used the Molten copper, and these are so easy to colour. The melon dots I had quite a few of. I've actually run a bit low on the black and white ones, so I thought that this would be a good colour to cover over the top of. I'm pretty sure you can do this with any colour, but then of course the darker the dot, it might affect the colour that shows through on the metallic element. Now, when you do something like this, you do need to set it aside to dry because it is wet. You can see it's quite shiny there. So this is something that you would do early on if you're scrapbooking, and set them aside to dry. I just love the brassy look that this molten copper gives to these, and I haven't used a lot of them. They're just sprinkled around here. I've used the stars on this layout, just around the clusters of these little tags and stickers that I've put on. And you can see this little suitcase here, that's from the scrapbooking stamp set and thin cut. So let's move on to layout 2. I've done some more blending on this one, just using Vintage Photo. So I've just distressed the edges of this suitcase pattern, and I really love the passport stamp paper, and I've distressed the edges of that as well. You can see I've used the molten copper metallic marker on these elements here for the dots and the stars. I think it really works well with the travel type theme. And when I'm constructing things, I do leave part of the backing sheet on to my stickers so that I can put my photo on there later, and then I can take that piece off to give a nice clean edge. Here's the title for this actual collection. It's a sticker in there, and that's really all one piece, but I decided to split that up so I could stagger it on my layout rather than having a full landscape style title. And adding a little bit of twine to these tag elements just finishes them off perfectly. And you can see here are the rubber suitcase shapes. They just work so well being stacked up and around other elements. This one's got 3 of them, with the large one at the bottom and 2 little ones on top. And these are 2 here that I've split out on each side of this tag. And you can see I've got some of these little ticket elements spread around. This is also from the Are We There Yet borders. I'll just take this out of the packet so you can have a look. This is all one strip, but it doesn't have a die cut with it. So what I did was just stamp it in multiple colours. I've mainly used sapphire, lagoon, and mocha for the stamping for this, but every now and then there's some toffee as well. And once I'd stamped a few strips of those, I just fussy cut those out. They were quite easy to cut out with my scissors. And you can see I've got those little icons tucked around again in a couple of the places here in and amongst the clusters of embellishments. Now we'll move on to the third layout. I haven't done any ink blending on this one because I quite like the crispness of the icons, so I just wanted to leave this a fairly clean and simple type layout. You can see I've grouped the stickers together again, the rubber stickers, and these are the stickers from the actual pack, and they just work so well. I just wanted to put all of the directional ones on this one layout spread. This is one of the zip strips from the collection, so I've just cut that into a 1/4 inch strip to top and tail here. And these little pieces here are rectangles with sapphire cardstock. And I haven't done this on the Cricut. I've actually done this with some partial die cutting using our circle thin cuts. And all you need to do, because this is a 2-inch strip, is just put your circle, feed it over the top like this, center it, and then put some washi tape on and run it through your cutting machine. I'll bring that over here so you can see that with a white background. So I've just centered that, adhered some washi tape and run that through. Now I haven't run it all the way through my machine. I've just run it until this piece has actually cut, and then I've wound it back again, because sometimes when you keep winding through, you'll get a little ridge mark from this part underneath. You can see that's not going to cut the paper, but it could leave an indentation. So, and that is how I just achieved these little rounded edges, and I think they add a little bit of flow and movement to the layout. Once again, I've used some of our old twine here, the sapphire crochet thread. That's no longer available, but you could use DMC floss or embroidery thread or anything that you have in your stash for that. And this is like a triple mat here. I've got sapphire, toffee and white daisy, and the same on this side, and then I've got another large sapphire piece to ground this 3 photo spread layout. I just love all of the stickers that you can get with this set that come with the paper patterns. They are just perfect for travel pages or even just a day out. And you can see here I've got a few of these sprinkled around. These are the little melon dots coloured with the molten copper marker. So you can see with layout 4, I've actually done some more ink blending. I've inked around the edges of some of the passport photo. I've done clusters on each side of this photo spread here. You can definitely add more photos to this layout with flip flaps. You can change these to a 6x4 orientation if you like, and you can run some more 3x3 photos along this section as well. But what I decided to do with this paper, when I brought it in, it is fairly bold with the sapphire background. So this geotag paper, I just felt like I wanted to tone that down a little bit. So I've brought in some White Daisy pigment ink and the blending tool, and I've just sponged around the outside area here and then just dragged some of that inking across the page. You can see here it's not quite even, and that was intentional. I just wanted some of that to show through as more of the sapphire look, but I wanted to tone down certain areas of it just to soften the look of it. And I've actually done the same thing with this Sundance Arrow piece here. You can see there is a difference between these two colours. By putting the White Daisy ink over the top, it does soften this quite a lot. It actually looks a little bit like a shortbread colour here, but I've also left areas of it untouched with the White Daisy because I wanted the original colour to show through as well. Once again, there's quite a few of those little dots spread around, and this title here comes from the scrapbooking set. So that's Our Getaway, stamped in sapphire ink and die cut out. I just thought that that balanced this out. This is one of the stickers from the sticker sheet, and I just felt like this side needed some sapphire up here as well to bring in these two colours and to make it all match with the papers that I've used. As I said, the link to all the information for the workshop guide will be in the description box below. I'm just bringing these pages in for another quick look for you. Flip flaps are definitely your friend with a travel album, or you could bring in the pocket pages as well that fit in the extra little additional photos. They work really well to extend the amount of photos that you have within your layouts. So that's the Are We There Yet collection. So what I'm going to do now is bring in the Freshly Baked collection on top of the layouts that I've just done. You can see this is exactly the same cutting pattern that I've designed, and it works beautifully with the Freshly Baked collection as well. The sticker placements are of course not exactly the same. I've got a little recipe sticker here and the cookies and everything. And it doesn't quite work the same because obviously with the collections, the stickers are different for both of the packets. So you just adapt it to work with what you have on hand. The Freshly Baked collection, I actually didn't do any additional stamping like I've done with the Are We There Yet collection. But what I did do with the stickers was that I did bring in the tri-blend markers and add some additional little shading elements. So I'll point those out as I go through these layouts. It just gives a little bit more depth and gives the rolling pin a little bit more of a round look, as well as this piping bag. And I've done that several times throughout the sticker collection. You can see I've done this here as well on this little piping bag, and the dots that I've used throughout this are actually the Freshly Baked dots. So I'm just going to take this layout away and I'll bring in the Freshly Baked one with this cutting pattern. I did debate whether or not I should show these, but a lot of people have this collection and may not have used it yet, and I thought it might give you some ideas of what you can do with these gorgeous papers. So you can see I've copied this cutting guide so that it transferred from Freshly Baked over to Are We There Yet really easily, and I do love how they both look. They both look different. They don't look exactly the same. And of course, they're not going to go in the same album at all. So people won't know that I've just repeated a pattern with different papers. This is some more colouring that I did with the tri-blend markers. I just found that the colours on the plate of biscuits or cookies was just a little bit flat. There wasn't too much shading on there. So I've just gone in with the tri-blend markers and defined the outer edges or the bottom outer edges of the cookies and then blended in with the medium and then the light shade just to give a little bit more definition to these. I've done it on the individual cookie stickers as well, and I really like how that turned out. I was a bit nervous when I started doing it. I practiced on one of the little stickers first, but once I'd done it, I realised that that was the look that I wanted to achieve. These ones away and we'll go to layout 3. So you can see these are the two left pages here. The sticker placements are a little bit different, but they both bring something to these layouts. And then this is the left page. I've done that same circle technique with the partial die cutting and layering up the stickers with foam dots, some straight to the page and some raised up. And that creates, I think, a gorgeous look to these. But I just love how the zip strips work on this, and also the Freshly Baked had a lot of word strip stickers as well, as does the Are We There Yet pack, and I always love that. So we'll take this away and I'll bring in the layout 4. So these are the two left sides. You can see I've used White Daisy as a base for the Are We There Yet, and the Freshly Baked is a French vanilla base because that was the colour in the patterns here. And here's the right page, so I'll just bring that aside so you can just compare them. I didn't do the inking or the distressing on the Freshly Baked ones. I just left the papers as they were originally intended. So now I'm going to go through and I'll just do a little demo on how I achieved the effects on these pattern papers. And I also, before I go, I also want to show you what is left over from this kit. As I said, I used the paper packet with the stickers, and this is all that remains of the actual paper packet. And for the rubber stickers, I didn't use these Bluebird ones. They were a little bit too bright, so I'll put them on another project. I just felt with the distressing I was doing, and I was using sapphire mostly, that these were just a little bit too strong in colour. So this is all the paper that I have left. So that could easily make another layout. I've got a couple of stickers here that are left, so they could all go onto a little project all of their own because the colour tones all work well together. And I just have a couple of strips of paper from the patterns, and then some of the zip strips, and also these two little pieces of border strips that I've got left as well. So I pretty much used all of the kit and the accessories that I put together with this workshop guide, and I love how they've all worked out. So if you'd like to see how I achieved these looks with the inking and a couple of other little tricks with this workshop, stay tuned. As explained earlier, I have done some inking treatments to these. Unfortunately, I put this base part together before I thought about showing you how I achieved this result on camera, but I do have a piece of pattern paper here. The pattern's quite subtle, but it does replicate the colours here, so it does have a little bit of lagoon and glacier in it. So I'm going to show you how I achieved the depth of this with the highlight here. And I'm also going to show you the treatment on the inking that I've done on this layout here. This is layout number 4. This is layout number 1. This is the right page, and I have got the left page with these exact same pattern papers. So I'm just going to clear this away and bring in what I've used for this. I'll keep this bit here on camera so that you've got a little bit of a reference for the look that I'm going for. What I've done is come in with actually 3 inks. 2 of them are the Close to My Heart inks, so Sapphire and Lagoon, and then I've brought in Vintage Photo. So the first thing that I did is bring in Sapphire. Now you can do this directly onto your all-purpose mat and clean up between each one. So I've brought in my blending brush, and I've just gently gone around the edges of this just to bring a little bit of sapphire. So you can see there's a little bit of depth of colour in here. But then we're going to go over top of this with Lagoon to blend it out a little bit more. Now, Close to My Heart now have the blending brushes and they're black handles. So what I would suggest you do if you've got those, I've had these ones for quite some time now, so I'm still using them because that's what I have on hand. So to label these, you could create a little sticker or a label, and you could just put the label on there of blue or what dark blue or something like that. But if you wanted to have more in your collection for each colour, you could do some ink blending onto a sticker and then wrap that around the handle, or even put it onto, depending what type of stickers you use, onto the actual top of the brush here. So that's all I need to do for the sapphire. And then I'm going to bring in Lagoon ink, but I don't want to contaminate onto the brush that I'm going to use. So there are 2 options. You could spray this with water, or you could use a baby wipe. I just have water-based baby wipes. And then I'm going to dry it off with some paper towel, and it's very quick, as you can see, to clean up. And then I'm going to bring in Lagoon. So I do have just 2 blue brushes, or if you had the black blending brushes from Close to My Heart, I would recommend having one for darker blues like the Harbour and the Sapphire and the Bluebird, and then one for the lighter blues, because you can always clean them off after you've used them, so that the Lagoon, if I rub this off onto a piece of paper, I can get rid of most of the ink from the Lagoon, and then I can go in with Glacier, which is a lighter ink as well. So you can see I'm just blending this back, and I'm not going into the middle at all, because I want to keep the highlight and the pattern. Now with this paper here, the pattern does show through. This one's much more subtle. It's just a little dot pattern, but I don't have any of this paper left over after creating this workshop. So I thought this was the closest one that I could show you, but I haven't lost any of this design at all with the blending that I have done with the Sapphire and now the Lagoon treatment. So I am doing exactly the same sort of thing. And the blending brushes are a lot easier to use with our Close to My Heart water-based inks rather than a blending foam. So I'm just working this around until I get the look that I wanted. I've probably gone in a little bit further with the Sapphire on this piece than what I did on these pieces here. But once I'm happy with how that looks, I'm then going to call that done. Wipe up my surface so I don't transfer any of that Lagoon ink onto anything that I don't want it to go on. And then to give it even more distressing on the edges, I'm going to come in with Vintage Photo, and for Distress Oxide inks, I just use the foams. And I'm going around the edges of these. And when I get to the corner, I flatten out my blending tool just a little bit so that more of the Vintage Photo goes into the corner pieces. So it's like creating a vignette for your pattern paper. So you can see I go up over the top of that and blend that in just a little bit. Quite easy to do this, and it doesn't take terribly long, and it just gives a totally different colour altogether and a different look to the paper, and you've still retained a highlight in the middle here. You can see I'm going back over with my Lagoon ink and just blending in that Vintage Photo just a little bit. I wouldn't go in with my brown blending brush of this into Vintage Photo because I don't like mixing the 2 inks. They are totally different formulas, and you don't want to contaminate one from the other. And you can see with this, I'm just working around the outside edges just to combine those colours a little bit more. And I think that gives a really lovely look to that piece. I do have another offcut of this pattern paper, so you can see the difference that you get and the depth that you get with adding just a little bit of ink, and that was quite quick to do. And I love how this looks on this pattern paper and how that sort of brings it to life a little bit. So I'm going to clean up again, and then I'm going to show you how I've distressed the other pattern papers. I'm just going to lay these out side by side. This is the treated piece, and this is the untreated pattern papers. And you can see that it's quite a bit of difference. But the blending that I've done with this one is a little bit different to what I just showed you. I've gone over the whole piece of paper here rather than containing it to the edges. And I've done the same with this one. And what I've done is used our White Daisy pigment-based ink. You can see the difference between this Sundance colour to this piece here. There's still a little bit of Sundance coming through, but this almost makes this look like shortbread, and that appealed to me a lot. I liked dulling down these bright bold colours just a little bit more for the purposes of this workshop. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I do have a blending tool with a foam on here that is just for White Daisy. And the way I started this off was just by going around the edges because I wanted to see how I liked the look of that. And as I was doing that, I decided that I really loved this look and I wanted to bring it in a little bit more. So I just started gently swiping like this just to see what it would look like on an area that I know was going to be covered by this large photo mat here when I was playing around with it to begin with. If you have planned out your layouts and you're not quite sure how a paper is going to react to having some White Daisy ink or something like that on it, plan out your page and pick a spot where something is going to hide all of that so you're not going to ruin your piece. So I'm just going to continue going all the way around the edges of this. I'm not being very careful at all. And white pigment ink does take a bit longer to dry. It does stay wet for quite some time. You can use a heat gun on it, or you can just set it aside so that it will dry on its own time, probably overnight or for a few hours. It's a very hot day here today, so this might not take too long. But you can see I've gone all the way around the edge of this. But what I want to do now is bring in more of this look. I'm not going to cover the whole lot. I've shown other videos where I've gone over the whole entire piece to dull it down, but I want to just bring in some of this ink, and you can see I'm getting some pounce marks here, but that's not so hard to actually blend out with this ink at all. And if I think I've gone a bit too heavy, I can bring in my paper towel and I can rub that off just a little bit so that it's not quite as stark white on there. I don't have to ink up all the time. These stay quite wet with the ink. And then where I've got those pounce marks, I'm just spreading that out to cover more of this area. So you can see they're disappearing just by blending that out. I haven't added any more ink onto this foam top. And I just need to work it so that I've got some of these original colours coming through with a little bit of wash on them, and some of them have more of the whitewashing on them. I'm just going to bring in my original piece here for the right page and have a look to see if it's somewhat similar. And then I'm going to bring in my paper towel and just blend some of this out just a little bit more, just to wipe it away. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. That's the fun of ink distressing. You get a different look each and every time. And on the edges where it's a little bit too defined, I'm just going to drag my tool over just a little bit to make those edges not quite as straight. I'm going to call that done. And now I'm going to work on this Sundance arrow piece with the pattern paper. I'm doing the same thing. I'm going around the edges because that's where I want my ink to definitely be on all of these pattern pieces. I'm doing the same thing that I did before. When I get to the corners, I'm flattening the tool out just a little bit to add some more on there. And then I'm going to ink that up just the once, come off the edge and start doing some swiping. Now this is going to be covered up a lot by the photos. I've got 3x3 photo placeholders to go over this that will give a white matte. So I can just trim my photos down just a little bit so that there will be a white edge between this and the pattern paper, between the photo and the pattern paper. I really love having mattes on my photos in most cases. So I'm just spreading this around a little bit, leaving some of the areas with the proper tone. So I might apply more pressure on the edge and then ease off a little bit when I come into the middle here. So that's that piece done. I think that'll be enough. I'll just bring in my right page and have a little look. Actually, I might bring in a little bit more white. It's better to go in with a lighter hand. You can always add more. So it's better to start off light and then build it up. So that's that piece done. You can see by my hands, white ink is very, very moist and the pigment ink takes a long time to dry. So once again, I just need to clean up my surface. And now that that's all cleaned up, you can see I've got the base of this page all ready to go. The other thing that I did with this leftover little piece, this side has the map that's in the Glacier and Lagoon, but I've used the passport stamps on this, and I've distressed the edges with Vintage Photo, and I'm just using the ink that's left on the sponge here from when I was inking up before, and I'm just going around the edges and coming in flatter on the corners. So there's plenty of ink left on here just to give the effect that I want. So that's the tip with the ink blending, just to dress your layouts up a little bit more if you want to. It's totally personal choice whether you want to do the ink distressing or whether or not you want to leave the papers as they're intended.